I wanted to start off by saying congratulations. This film is absolutely spectacular. It's one of the most beautiful films I've seen recently, so congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. That's really kind of you. I'm really proud of it, and if it's moved you and you've enjoyed it, that means heaps. So thanks. I appreciate it.
So Matthew, tell us a little bit about where the idea first came about for you for this film. You wrote it as well as directed it, so tell us a little bit about where that idea came about for the screenplay originally.
Well, I suppose it's a bit of write what you know, and then find another story inside of it. So when I was 17, I went to a boarding school, that kind of a thing, and my grandma broke her leg. She was slightly, I wouldn't say she was estranged, but I hadn't really had much to do with her from our family, and she moved in and kind of ruled our house with a mechanical bell, like in the film. And then I suppose it's kind of taking those elements, and then I was attracted to this idea of this strong sort of matriarch that comes in, and then sort of making that character something else. So my grandma had these amazing stories. She's very smart. She also drank a lot of gin from her chest. I've actually got her final bottle just up over in my house there. There's a tiny bit left, and she'd been to the Spanish Civil War and all these kinds of things, and so I took her character and I made a kind of a new person based on her experiences and just doing research. So I looked at people like Martha Gellhorn, who was actually born in the same time, in the same year as my grandma, and kind of made an amalgamated character, I suppose, and it kind of came from there, really. And I suppose the big thing was I started off maybe telling a coming of age story, and then discovered I was sort of writing a platonic romance, if that makes sense, a love story between this 17-year-old boy and his estranged grandmother.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say that's one of the most beautiful elements of this film is the relationship between Ruth and Sam. Tell us a little bit about how you approached that with both Charlotte Rampling and also George as well. Did you sit down and talk to them about what you wanted that relationship to be like between the two?
Well, obviously it was very intimidating, but George was pretty close to 17 at the time of casting, and this is his first big gig. So it was kind of like trying to find someone who I think could work with her and whether they had chemistry, that kind of thing. And I suppose it was like building chemistry between them and kind of taking a leap of faith, and it worked out. Charlotte was really wonderful and worked with him, but we started building that kind of relationship before they met. So actually we got George once we decided he was the one. And to be honest, I showed that tape to Charlotte before we finalised casting, and I got George to do things like to write a handwritten letter to Charlotte Charlotte, just to sort of put him in the time period. He sort of wrote to her expressing his fears and that he was looking forward to working with her, and that he admired her work and so on, and then she was kind enough to respond. So he got this handwritten letter from Charlotte, and that was kind of the beginning of that relationship. We didn't have, we worked a lot with sort of building backstories and lived-in experiences for these characters, but also we didn't have a huge amount of rehearsal time. So I suppose the first time we put them together, it was kind of like when I knew it was gonna kind of work. And there's a 2-shot in the film where George comes in and sits next to her in the car, and they have this little face-off, and that was kind of, we were like, oh, okay, they've got chemistry. It's going to work.
How did you discover George? Because he is amazing in this film. I said in my review, he's like a young Heath Ledger in this film. Was he someone that you knew of, or was it a cold canvas, really?
You know what? We just looked at everyone at that age. We just did this open casting call. We looked at hundreds of people, and he just sort of came through, and he just kind of popped, I guess. He could kind of get there without me pushing him in a truthful way, and he kind of fronted in the audition. He threw a few little things in that weren't scripted, like the moment where she says to him, "Do the girls like you?" And he goes, "Yeah," or does this kind of thing, and that's not scripted, and he just kind of put it in there, and I was like, okay. And to be honest, it was a huge leap of faith, because I had to audition him, via Zoom and just kind of self tapes, but it just was very apparent after a while that he was the guy. So it was very much a unanimous thing. Yeah.
And because Ruth was kind of loosely based on your grandmother, was the casting of Charlotte difficult at all?
Well, it was difficult in the sense that I had to get it.
Yeah.
So that was really difficult. I mean, it was kind of about wooing her. I suppose we managed to get her the script, and she read it, and she really liked it, and she said, "Yep, she's definitely interested." And then I guess she sort of thought about coming all the way over to New Zealand and, and what that would mean. And so I kind of wrote her a letter, and I said, "Look, it's you. We would love you, and what can I do? Look, I understand all this. Let me just come over and meet you." So me and the producer just hustled, and we went over there. We took some gin, some New Zealand gin over, and we met her in Paris and had this meeting, and she spoke about what she liked about the story and what she did. And then I kind of managed, I suppose, she gave me 3 days to work with her, and we kind of gelled and built a relationship. And I suppose I said to her, "Yes, this is this character, but you have to have some ownership." So in some ways we're going to craft her together based on what she thought was working and what she didn't think was working with that character for her. So it kind of really grounded it in her. But the major thing was, how do I say this? I found this photo of my grandmother when I was young, and I didn't realize it was her. And I said to my dad, "Geez, Dad, who's that? She's a babe, she's striking." And he goes, "That's your grandmother, And my own grandmother had the presence of a woman who knew the power of the way she looked. And that's something similar to Martha Gellhorn as well. She's a famous war journalist, and she used to use her smarts, but she could also get into all these places and get these stories because she had this power over me. And Charlotte sort of has that, that she carries something, this sort of magnetism that I think was really, really important. That comes through in the character. It's not. I suppose it's not something you can really act. You kind of either have it or you don't, really, and it's a kind of power. And she owns the camera, really.
Definitely. And did the pandemic make it difficult for you with that as well, of bringing Charlotte over to New Zealand? Because I know you had really strict lockdowns like we did here in Australia.
Well, it was one of those things. We were shooting, and there was talk about this virus, and we were kind of all laughing it off. And we finished shooting. I think I had 4 weeks. It was 5 weeks shoot. I had 4 weeks with Charlotte, and we finished. We did a rough cut, and then we locked down. And then it was like, okay, well, we've got what we've got. There was no time. There was no pickups. There was no. If it wasn't there, if the film wasn't there, then it wasn't there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So there was kind of no margin for error, and luckily, or to go back and to reshoot anything, there was no way. So we were kind of lucky in the regard that it didn't stop us, but then there was no, that what we had was what we had.
Yeah. There's a lot of young filmmakers that listen to this show, and they're probably wondering this question as well. This is your debut feature after doing some short films as a director. What was the biggest difference you noticed going from short films to a feature film?
Well, I suppose it's like the difference between running a sprint and running a marathon, really, and holding everything together. I mean, look, there's short films, you're doing it on a low budget, you're doing everything yourself. And a feature film, you're supported. I was lucky I had, really smart, wonderful heads of department that I could work with that could provide things for me. But there is also that kind of, like that sort of thing of keeping your eye on the ball the whole time. And I certainly, after that 5 weeks, I was kind of broken by it, because you were thinking backwards and forwards all the time. There's just so much more. There's just so much more to manage, really. But then there's also that sort of that support, which is great.
Definitely. Now, I know we are running out of time very, very quickly, so I guess to finish off with a quick question, what would you like your audience to take away from this film?
Oh, look, I just want people to laugh and enjoy them and see themselves in it, and hopefully have a kind of transformative experience. I hope that people can see their own families and their own selves in it. Families are interesting and complex things, so I hope they can go and laugh and cry and enjoy those characters as much as I do, really.
Definitely.